Great, I mutter, tapping a few keys to suppress the audio. Sunmad, Minister, just what we needed. The protocol mandates daily cross-referencing between all major systems, power grids, water distribution, air filtration. It's a tedious process, but necessary for maintaining balance across the galaxy. I navigate through the network, my eyes scanning for any anomalies. The console hums softly as I check the status of the core world's life. Support systems. A red dot blinks in the upper right corner. Water rationing on Alderaan is 1% higher than usual. Alderaan. Westenbrecher, Alderaan, a hub for resistance efforts led by Princess Leia and her team. Their absence has become a silent presence, a reminder that we're not just maintaining the status quo, we protect their interests too. The thought of potential threats makes my stomach twist. My fingers move to the next tab, as my mind braces for a wave of numbers and requests. A series of numbers flash by it: 572, 603, 498. Each one represents a planet, an ecosystem, a community depending on our decisions. The weight of it all is crushing, and I know is crushing. Permission granted, I say aloud, typing in the confirmation code. I confirm the next request. Wow. A request comes in for Tatooine, needing moisture operators and water extraction equipment. I approve it, my fingers moving with practiced ease, but something feels off. Like a missing piece in an intricate puzzle, I decide to take a closer look at the Tatooine request. The numbers are slightly skewed, more than what would be considered normal fluctuation. A small error, perhaps, but one that could have serious consequences if unchecked. Double-checking, I mutter, pulling up additional data on water consumption. The numbers confirm my suspicion. Tatooine is using 15% more water than reported. I need to alert someone, but who? Leia's forces are scattered, and reporting this would make me a target for the Empire. They wouldn't hesitate to punish us if they found out. The console lights up again, interrupting my thoughts. Access denied, it warns. Cross-referencing required. I sigh, knowing I have no choice but to follow protocol. The cross-reference process is cumbersome and time-consuming, involving multiple layers of verification before the change can be approved. Cross-referencing initiated, I say, tapping the necessary codes. A series of numbers and letters appear on the screener. Verification codes from various systems. I type them in one by one, my fingers moving methodically but deliberately slow. Each digit feels like a step closer to exposing something hidden. After what seems like an eternity, the system confirms the cross-reference as valid. The Tatooine request is now flagged for further investigation. The console finally gives me approval to proceed with the change. I click approve and send it through. As I finish the approval process, an alert icon with a flashing red exclamation mark and the number 234 grabs my attention. It's the code for the water distribution system on Alderaan. A warning light. I scroll back up to the Tatooine request, wondering what I overlooked. I notice the numbers are consistent now, but that still leaves me puzzled about the initial flag from the cross-reference. Unexplained discrepancy. The system prompts me. Review and resolve. Tension builds as I realize the gravity of my actions. I can't ignore this. Yet, I have to consider the risks. The Empire would see this as a breach of protocol, a potential betrayal. Betrayal. A timer counts down ominously in the corner. Each second, a reminder of impending protocol checks. I know what I must do. Reviewing and resolving, I say. fingers poised over the keyboard. But as I type, the door to my office slides open with a quiet hiss. Leia stands there, her eyes narrowing as she scans the screen. "What are you doing?" she asks, voice low but firm. I swallow hard, knowing the stakes have just risen. Checking for discrepancies, I say, forcing myself to meet her gaze. It's protocol. Yeah, it's soon going to like it. Her expression softens slightly. She nods approvingly, her expression softening slightly. But we need to act fast if we're going to stop them. No. Agreed. I nod, my heart pounding despite my best efforts to remain calm. Leia steps closer, her presence a reminder of the responsibility we share. Let's get this resolved. Where? I can't shake the feeling that we are walking into a trap. The Empire watches us closely, and they will not hesitate to strike if they sense weakness. But what choice do we have? She says, we need to address Alderaan first. And don't coach him, not down. Her voice is steady, but urgent. Right, I say, my mind racing as I start typing the necessary codes for the cross-reference on Alderaan. I warn him silently, be ready. We might not get another chance. What? The console whirs to life with the new data, and the red exclamation mark disappears. The numbers are now consistent. Resolved, I announce, sending the update through. Leia's face is a mix of relief and determination. Let's hope this buys us some time. Nishter, remember, not the traps. But as she turns to leave, I can't help but wonder. How much do we really know about what's happening? And how long can we keep hiding in plain sight? The console hums softly, the only sound in the room. Time passes slowly, as the console waits for its moment to act again. The clock ticks on, counting down the seconds until the next cycle begins. And it's not as glamorous as one might think. A single technician checks his console for the umpteenth time today. The permit office window hums softly, its glass a dull silver under the harsh lights of Coruscant Tard's day. I slide my ID card through the slot, waiting for the green light that never comes. Permit denied. The machine spits out, its voice a monotone beep. I glance at the list on the wall. All essential services exempt. Essential services include everything from security droids to spice haulers. But me, Mail. I'm just another tech, patching up systems no one ever sees. The queue behind me is starting to stir. A grizzled old engineer shuffles forward, his face a mix of frustration and resignation. He mutters something about starving droids and ungrateful protocols. I shrug it off and head back to the console, where the blinking lights seem to mock my predicament. Well, the galaxy keeps running, but at what cost? Coruscant dawned, in shades of grey, light barely piercing through the perpetual smog. Tech's fingers danced over the console, his eyes scanning the notice board outside my window. All essential services exempt. The rule had bitten hard today. The queue snaked back past the permit office door, now a bottleneck for hundreds waiting on me to process their paperwork. A security droid's red eyes fixed on me warily as I tapped away at the console. Techs in critical roles have priority, I muttered under my breath. Tech's face was a grimace of frustration. How long will it take? Just one more, I replied, barely glancing up from the screen. I glanced up and saw the notice board had been updated again, now displaying a message about extended permits due to system overload. A young engineer tugged impatiently on his sleeve. We can't just wait here all day. I'm going to sense. Tech's eyes narrowed. Well, what be sick she made. Tell me when it's done. He stalked away, muttering about the ineptitude of the system. Pointing out, "Night-see." The droid tilted its head slightly, as if weighing something. "Permit office queue is at maximum capacity," it stated flatly. "Understood," I replied, my voice a tight-lipped effort to stay composed. I noticed the notice board had been updated with a new message. System-wide rationing due to resource strain. A man in a torn tunic approached the droid. "Can you get us in faster, somehow?" The droid's response was unyielding. Priority assigned, based on service classification. High-tech returned, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "We're running behind." "I soon go. Hiring my steel. Someone needs to go." Nui. Blam. My fingers steeled themselves as I printed out the permit. "Here. He needs it done by noon, or his shift ends early." He took it and nodded curtly before disappearing back into the queue. The droid's eyes watched me for a moment longer, then turned away. "Permit office processing times may increase due to resource allocation adjustments," it added softly. I text permit was just one piece of a vast puzzle. The galaxy kept running, but at what cost? My narrator stands in line, the hum of Coruscantars, Undercity enveloping me like a thick fog. The droid, behind the window, drones on about service classifications, its voice mechanical and monotonous. "System-wide rationing will begin if we do not clear this queue." A young tech, high-tech, glances over at me, her eyes wide with concern. "Jar's been here for hours, her shift missing." The droid pauses, then calls out to I narrator. "Nishidont in a shell, Nebeston Terrigent matter not." My narrator steps forward, a stack of permits clutched tightly. The queue stretches endlessly, each person behind holding their own burden. The droid's tone shifts slightly, hinting at hidden protocols. "Priority 1. Essential services," it intones. "If you are not a Priority 1, your permit will be reassigned." I tick her. Face pales as she hears the droidar's words. The queue moves forward, and my narrator is left alone with the droid. The shuttle door opens with a soft hiss, and a security officer steps inside. And the security officer steps inside. His gaze lingers on the techs in line, then meets mine. "How should I it all? How soon? Contemplating that sound. Need help?" he asks, his voice low and probing. My narrator shakes my head, trying to maintain composure. The shuttle doors close again, and the droid returns to its list of services. A monitor flickers with red text. "Audit in 30 minutes. A monitor above flickers with red text. "An audit in 30 minutes. Panic surges through the text, but there is no time for it. The queue continues, each permit issued, pushing them closer to critical failure points. My narrator steps back into line, the droid's words echoing in my mind. "If we can't clear this now, the rationing will start." And with that, the queue grows ever longer, each person a silent testament to the strain on our system. How much more can they handle before it all breaks? And an episode like urgent guarding outbreaks. The queue stretched like the tendrils of a spore plant, each tech a cog in the endless machine. I watched the droidar's eyes scan the crowd, its beady optics lingering on security officer Rukas, his arms crossed and eyes locked onto me. High tech, the audit starts at 1400 hours. We must clear this queue before rationing begins. A young tech fidgeted, his fingers drumming against a tablet. The droidar, voice cut through the noise like a blade. And ordined, "Droid, priority services only. Neshtenpot, Metroperit, Marching Chill, Oblidag. Others will be rationed." The air grew thick with tension as I checked IDs and permissions, my eyes darting to Rukas. He didn't blink. No one moved in the queue. A single tech snuck a glance at his watch, fingers tightening on the edge of the desk. High tech, We cannot let them ration us out here. Not now. No, we return. Much out. Rationing would mean shutting down services, and with it, our access to the upper levels. The thought sent a chill through me. I needed to move faster, but the Drydar's gaze was relentless. The queue lengthened as more text filtered in, their faces pale and hopeful. I handed back, denied-eyes, my fingers trembling slightly. Ruka-san. Presence made every interaction feel like an interrogation. I-Tech. I cannot hold this for much longer. Mar. Someone will crack. Amidst Sinrit, our daring deal at a Mr. Break and Outdoor. Tension Date, Uyard, Aldana Ali. Ration Desk Q. Moto, Alston Wenzio. The Droidos. Eyes narrowed on a tech with a questionable ID. I moved quickly, but the Droidos' response was swift and decisive. Droid. Access denied to Technician 37245. Battle Designer. The Tekars. Face paled as he was ushered out of the queue. I must stand over that network should carry the launching race, the not sure to not do. Panic rippled through the crowd. More eyes were questioned, more denials issued. Queue. Lengthened arrow. Arrived shown. Ration desk. Permit office window. By corridor. Roystering. I-Tech. This cannot go on like this. Someone will start a riot if we do not. Act soon. The droid's voice remained cold and unyielding, announcing the next ID without pause. Droid. Access granted to Technician 218,976. A tech snatched his pass, nodding in relief before shuffling back into line. The queue seemed to grow faster now. More desperate eyes on me. Hour. Queue lengthened. Hello. Nice to see you. Continuation. Majarican. Young. Hello. I-Tech. We need a plan. Now. Akshingo. Stone. The nervous stone. Now. Ow. The Droidar's next denial left another tech out of the queue, filling the space with palpable tension. I felt Ruka-Sa, gaze sharp and unrelenting. Ration. Desk permit office window. I-Tech. This is madness. Someone will crack soon. The tension will break soon. A tech stumbled, his ID rejected. He turned on me, face twisted in anger. Queue lengthened. Wagamil. Ration desk. Queue. I-Tech. Someone else going to snap if we don't act now. The Droidar's voice was a final warning as it processed another ID. Droid. Access granted to Technician 842,019. The tech stepped back into the line, his eyes on me. The droid's gaze shifted back to Rukas, signaling another rejection was about to happen. The queue lengthened as another tech was denied access. Queue lengthened. Ration desk queue. Widow, my canoe beckoned. Argonisidarek, Manabsando, Alewstek. I-Tech. We have to move. Now. Now. A ripple of fear spread through the crowd at the droid's next denial. A tech turned on Rukas, his face red with anger and frustration. Oh wow. Q. Lengthened arrow. Nisso. Ration desk Q. Widal. Martinberry. I-Tech. We cannot. Let this happen. Not here. Wand. Not now. Wishinaway. What's your name? What that terror? The Droidar's voice was a final warning as it processed another ID. Droid. Access denied to Technician 123,456. A tech lunged for the door, his anger boiling over. Ruka-san. Hand shot out and grabbed him by the shoulder, holding him in place with a firm grip. Q lengthened. Ration desk Q. I-Tech. We need to clear this now. Or Another technician was turned away, confirming my worst fears. The crowd was edging closer, their patience wearing thin. Ruka-san grip tightened on the Tekar's shoulder as he turned and faced me. Rukas tightened his grip and glared at me. "Oh, you cannot keep doing this." "Naninspel, Wanko, Octo, Wadibai, Anumsu. We need to follow protocol. Vanya and Chantu are Archiwogan, Marchap, and Radaman, these." A tech was denied and left the queue in despair. The tension was breaking. Another tech was denied access, leaving only one ID left in line. Queue lengthened. Ration desk queue. I tech. I cannot hold this any longer. We have to. The droidar's final denial sent the last tech out of the queue, his face a mix of relief and fear. The room was silent, save for the heavy breathing around me. Ruka-san grip on the tech was firm, but his eyes were locked on me. "Rukas, you are done enough." "I tech, no more." "We cannot let this happen." The droidar's voice cut through the silence as it processed the final ID. "Droid, access denied to technician 7,891,012. The Tikar's face crumpled, and he stumbled backward, falling to his knees. The queue was empty. The droidar's eye turned back to me, its optics piercing my resolve. The line at the ration desk grew longer. I knew what had to be done, but the cost was high. The droid's eye moved from tech to tech. Its final denial sent a tech out of the queue. The ration desk queue grew longer. Ruka-san grip on the last tech was firm as I turned to face him. "Rukas, you've done enough. Now it's my turn." "No, sir. No, don't Belkara. Now, Chinkakamane. Mokwisher, and tonight. Now, Derlo, in Manaduel." Queue lengthened. Ration desk going down and out. I tech, no more. A tech left the queue after the droid's next denial, leaving only security officer, Rukas and me behind. The audit was starting, and I knew what had to be done. Wham! Queue lengthened. Ration desk queue. Rastal. I tech. We cannot let this end like this. Queue at the ration desk stretches to the edge of the window. Mind the don't count. The last tech leaves, whispering under their breath as they shuffle away. I tech, and Rukas remain. The line grows longer by the second. For the second, a dozen techs line up. Their faces a mix of impatience and fear. The audit starts in 5 minutes. No more ration cards will be issued after that. A droid whirs past, its lights flickering as it scans the queue. Rukas sighs, tapping her fingers on the desk. "They need to make a decision soon," she says quietly. "Not practically." I glance at the window, counting the techs. 25 faces, each one more desperate than the last. If they all get ration cards now, we'll be in trouble. A tech steps forward, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Please, I need this," he pleads softly. I-Tech nods, but shakes her head. "Not today," she says firmly. The tech's face falls, and he shuffles back to the end of the line. The droid stops at a tech, who looks ready to snap. Its scanner beeps, and it turns away, leaving the tech seething in its wake. I-Tech glances at me, then Rukas. "We're running out of time," she says. "If another tech cracks, we might lose control." "I see you, Raname. I'll link at trail." Rukas nods, her expression grim. "Let's move fast." She picks up a clipboard and starts sorting through the ration cards. A tech behind us clears his throat, loudly. Mountain Rock, He looks ready to explode. Tech catches my eye, then steps forward quickly. Not today, she repeats, handing him an empty card. The tech's face reddens, but he retreats without a fight. The tension in the room is palpable, thick and heavy with unspoken threats. Tech turns back to Rukas. We need to clear this before the audit starts. She pushes a button on her desk, and the ration dispenser opens automatically, filling the air with the familiar scent of processed food. Techs start grabbing cards eagerly, their eyes wide with relief. Tech watches them carefully, ready to intervene if things get out of hand. A tech steps forward, his face flushed and determined. He grabs a card and takes off towards the audit line without another word. Rukas and I exchange a glance. The queue is nearly empty now, but the danger isn't over yet. One slip-up could spark something worse. Tech sighs deeply, her breath visible in the cold air. Let's hope they can hold it together, she says softly. Not in doubt, Derrick. The droid whirs past again, its scanner beeping ominously as it checks each tech before letting them through to the audit line. Whispers of unease circulate through the air as everyone waits for the next problem to arise. The permit office window loomed, a rectangle of metal and glass in the bustling terminal. I leaned against the wall, watching as Rukas typed furiously on his datapad. Wow, Tech, my partner, shifted uncomfortably. The queue outside was growing, and with each passing minute, desperation crept into the tech's eyes. Another one just walked out, I said, gesturing towards the doorway where a tech had already left without rations. They're going straight for the audit line. Rukas glanced up from his work, his face pale. We need to clear this before they start checking. He hurried through his tasks, fingers dancing over the keys with practiced speed. The permit office was a microcosm of the Galaxy R systems, efficient but vulnerable. Each tech had their own pass and access codes, which were checked against a central database during audits. Any discrepancy could lead to severe penalties, or even job loss. Today, we needed to keep everyone in line. Status reports, I commanded over the intercom. I want every tech at their station. A moment later, the response came through, all clear, while Rukas nodded, his relief palpable. But the tension didn't abate. The ration dispenser quota limit was tight, and each minute lost meant more risk. I couldn't afford a single glitch in our operation. Ration dispensers are at 50%, I said aloud, knowing Tech could hear me over the hum of machinery. We need to maintain efficiency. Tech sighed heavily. But we are already behind schedule. His fingers moved even faster as he worked through the backlog. The window outside was a blur of activity, techs jostling for position. Some were whispering, their voices barely audible over the din. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight pressing down on me. Keep an eye out, I advised Rukas. Any signs of trouble? We need to act fast. He nodded and continued his work, his concentration unwavering despite the growing pressure. The window shifted slightly as someone outside leaned against it for support. A tech who had just left without a ration was now standing with his arms crossed, staring in through the glass. Someone has already gone, I observed, my voice low. If they're leaving, others will follow. Rukas looked up, his eyes wide. We cannot let that happen. He hit the intercom again, this time calling for immediate action. The tech outside tensed, his grip on the window tightening. The sound of metal grinding against glass echoed in the quiet office, a sharp reminder of our precarious situation. Status reports. Rider, our nice jerk and downchain, our direction at tune. I barked into the intercom, my voice firm but controlled. Everyone stay at your stations. A new tech appeared in line, her expression desperate as she approached the queue. I need to go, she whispered urgently. No one can leave without their ration, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. We're under all in this together. She hesitated, then stepped forward, her resolve wavering. The clock ticked on relentlessly, a constant reminder of the deadline. Rations are critical, Rukas added, his voice equally steady. Everyone needs their permit checked. Post rations. The tech looked back and forth between us, then nodded reluctantly. She took her place in line, her shoulders sagging with relief as she waited for her turn, but the window remained a constant threat. The tech who had left was now standing just outside, his presence a stark reminder of the risks we faced. The sound of his breathing against the glass was almost audible, a subtle but unmissable warning. We need to stay vigilant, I said, my voice low and urgent. One mistake could cost us everything. Rukas nodded, his eyes never leaving the window. I'm with you. Silent tension filled the air as everyone waited for the next audit to begin. Each Tekos compliance was crucial, but the danger lurked just outside, waiting for an opportunity to strike. What now? What now? Rukas stood by the notice board, scanning through the list of assigned duties. The metal frame was scratched from years of use, and the paper stuck stubbornly to it. The rule: ration dispensers must not exceed 50% capacity at any time. The new tech, her face pale but determined, approached the queue. Her name tag read Talia. A tech had left without a ration yesterday. The notice board now displayed a list of all staff with pending audits. Talise hesitated, then stepped forward. I just need to finish this report, she said softly. No, Rukas glanced at her through narrowed eyes. People were lining up, their numbers increasing rapidly. A tech without rations was not just missing. They could be jeopardizing everyone's supplies. Last chance, Rukas muttered, checking the notice board again. Talizar's hands trembled as she handed over a clipboard. Yo, make it quick. Nishitstare, Marino, and get quick. The queue snaked around the corner and back, stretching like a hungry snake. Each person was a potential threat, each delay a chink in their armor of efficiency. Rukas turned to the notice board, her finger tracing the names of those who needed audits. Rukas, Talais, Lexa, Vorus. The rule remained firm but silent, a constant reminder of the quota limit. The dispenser beeped softly, signaling it was nearing 50% capacity. Talisas, report completed. She handed over her clipboard and stepped back. I'm good, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Rukas didn't look up as she checked the new data. Rukas saw 39%, Lexa 42%, Vorus 45%. An ominous asterisk appeared next to Talis's name on the notice board. Which is right down. Next is died on target right down. When it going junk, later, not a helpline old. Her presence was noted, but unverified. A potential breach waiting to be discovered. The tech who had left without rations was still outside, watching and waiting for the moment when the system would fail. Rukas glanced at the dispenser, its blue light barely visible in the dim corridor. The system beeped softly, alerting him to a critical status update. The ration dispenser was at 49% capacity, dangerously close to the 50% threshold. A tech had left without a ration yesterday, and the supply, robust protocols required immediate action to prevent another breach. Talis's report was unverified, but pending. The system would not dispense any more rations until it cleared. Rukas pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling the weight of increased scrutiny. He needed to audit this dispenser quickly before it triggered a full lockdown. Magically lockdown. The dispenser was. Beeping grew louder. It was time to act. There was still Rukas strode toward the unit, his steps echoing softly in the quiet corridor. He reached for the scanner, inputting his verification code with practiced efficiency. The screen flickered, and a green light confirmed Talis's report was valid. To dispenser's light blinked red. An error message flashed. Ration count exceeds threshold. Rukas sighed, knowing this would set off an alert. He quickly re-entered the correct rations used by the tech, ensuring the system read 45%. The light turned green again, and the dispenser was back online. The beeping stopped. Rukas exhaled slowly, glancing at his wrist. Chrono. 10 minutes remained until the audit began for the incoming shift. Much of terror, what are actually steps? Was not its incoming shift. He needed to double-check all nearby dispensers before then. Necessary for He moved down the corridor, his hand brushing against a cold metal panel as he passed. The Huber. Surveillance systems were always watching, ensuring no one exceeded their ration limits. If someone did, it could lead to severe disciplinary actions or even violence if the situation escalated. Rukas approached the next dispenser and started his inspection, carefully checking each slot for correct ration usage. He needed to ensure every tech followed protocol, no matter how close they were to a full day's supply. The beeping started again. Rukas' hand froze as he scanned the last slot. The light blinked red once more, and the system rejected his input. I did displayed and displayed. This time, the error was critical. He had missed something. Rukas rechecked the data, frowning at the discrepancy. Someone hadn't taken their rations today, pushing the dispenser over the limit. He tapped in the correct number of rations, used and waited for the system to confirm. Wow. The beeping stopped. The light turned green, and the dispenser was back online. But Rukas knew this was not the end. A tech could still return, demanding their missing ration, or worse, causing chaos. He moved on, but his steps were slower now, his mind racing with possibilities. Who had left their ration? Would they come back to claim it, or would they report him for an error? The beeping started again. Rukas' heart raced as he moved to the next dispenser. Rukas hurriedly finished the audit, his focus shifting to verifying Talisa's report as the shift change approached. He double-checked each slot, his mind consumed by the task at hand. Every tech had a ration log. Every tech was being watched. The system ensured compliance, but also kept everyone in check. The beeping stopped. Rukas sighed, his fingers trembling as he input the final verification code. Clear. The dispenser announced, but the relief was short-lived. No, the beeping started again. This time, it was a persistent alarm, indicating multiple errors across several dispensers. The system had flagged them for immediate inspection. Rukas's eyes widened as he realized the gravity of the situation. He needed to act fast before this turned into a full-scale emergency. The beeping grew louder. Rukas jogged down, the dimly lit corridor, his eyes scanning the dispenser logs. Rukas hurriedly checked each alarm dispenser, knowing the relief crew would be arriving soon. Rukas approached the nearest dispenser, which bore a red error code. He keyed in his access code and waited. A green light flickered as the machine whirred into life, dispensing data logs. The system hadn't run a full audit since last week. Rukas's techs had missed it. Ration dispenser thresholds must not be exceeded, he muttered under his breath, reminding himself of the rule that kept the galaxy running smoothly. Moving to the next unit, he found yet another red error light. This one was for a critical supply dispenser, and it wouldn't shut off. Talais were short on medkits at Sector 327. Rukas radioed his voice calm, despite the tension building in him. A few minutes later, Talis's reply crackled through. "I'm running diagnostics now, so Her tone was steady, but Rukas knew she was under pressure too. They needed to find and fix these errors quickly, or face increased scrutiny from system enforcers. As he continued his inspection, the corridor lights flickered intermittently, a sign of system instability. Rukas's techs had been working overtime, and now, this. He could feel the weight of their responsibilities pressing down on him. By the time he reached Sector 392, Rukas was exhausted but determined. The final dispenser held its own red error code. He keyed in his code, and the system whirred into life, displaying a new log. It showed that another tech had missed an audit 2 shifts ago. Missed verification, codes for Tech 478. Rukas read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "This could get me in trouble." The dispenser shut down as he keyed in the final code. The system alarms blipped once more before going silent. For now, there was silver, calendar, under mission. Rukas turned to leave, but the turnstile buzzed loudly, signaling that he was about to be locked out. He checked his access permit and found it had been flagged for review. "Talais," he said into the radio. "I'm getting locked out." A moment passed before she responded, "On my way." Her voice was calm, but Rukas knew there were only so many times they could dodge this issue. He leaned against the wall, feeling the cold metal press into his back. The turnstile buzzed again, and he heard the soft click as it locked him in place. He looked around, his mind racing. How long would it take for Talais to get here? And if she couldn't? The system alarms hadn't stopped yet. The alarms continued to blare, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Should I have just let them lock me out? He pondered his fate, unsure what would come next. Rukas stood in the dimly lit corridor, his gaze fixed on the blinking red lights of the critical ration dispensers. Talais should have been here by now. System enforcers. Holographic presence flickered above, a reminder that their eyes were everywhere. Thresholds must not be exceeded under any circumstances. Warwayne T. The dispenser asked. Alarm whined softly, the only sound in the otherwise silent corridor. Rukas clenched his fingers into fists, trying to keep calm. Talais arrived with a hurried breath and a grim face. And a grim face. "They are closing in," he whispered. Now. Talais tapped the dispenser console, but it remained stubbornly unresponsive. Rukas sighed, running through the protocol mentally. Check permissions, reinitialize system, cross-reference logs. He typed furiously, his fingers moving with practiced speed. Permissions must be validated before any action. The system refused to acknowledge either of their identities. "We're under a locked out," Rukas growled. A shadow darted across the console screen. As the system enforcer's presence was detected nearby, Talesar's eyes widened in panic, but he quickly masked his expression. What now? He asked, voice low and urgent. Rukas thought of the last time this happened. 2 weeks ago, when they were forced to reroute shipments through dangerous sectors. The memory left a bitter taste in his mouth. A faint smell of ozone filled the air as the enforcer's presence flickered closer, mere meters away. Emergency protocols must be followed during critical system failures. Talesar's permit was flagged as expired. Rukas looked at him helplessly. We need to get out before they find us, he said, voice barely above a whisper. The corridor lights dimmed slightly. As the enforcer's presence intensified, Rukas grabbed his bag and started to move down the corridor, Taleh following closely behind. They moved swiftly, but silently, their steps echoing softly against the cold metal walls. All movements must be minimized to avoid detection. Wow. A nearby monitor showed a video feed of them. The enforcer's hologram turned to face the screen, its eyes narrowing as it processed the images. The corridor lights flickered, and then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Rukas felt a chill run down his spine. We need to find a way back, he whispered, glancing at Talis in the dark. Talis nodded, his face illuminated by the faint light from their shared device. Let's go. And this girl. Rukas and Talis navigated through the dimly lit corridor, the silence heavy with tension. Rukas' hands trembled slightly as he typed on the console, trying to override the system, but knowing it was a futile attempt. The enforcer's presence lingered, its eyes still locked on their last movements. A low hum filled the corridor as the enforcers began to trace their path. Rukas and Talis moved faster, their hearts pounding silently in their chests. They turned a corner, the sound of approaching footsteps growing louder with each step. The corridor ended at a junction, leading them into an intersection of critical systems. Which way? Rukas asked, his voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. Talis pointed down one path that way. Rukas hesitated, glancing back at the enforcer's presence still trailing them. He knew they had to move quickly or face severe consequences. The corridor lights flickered again, casting shadows that seemed to follow their every movement. Rukas and Talis dashed down the chosen path, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them as if the enforcers were hot on their trail. Rukas' heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't afford to let it show. They had to keep moving, keep fighting, or face the wrath of the system enforcers. What now? Rukas slid silently along the wall, his fingers brushing against cold metal. Talis followed closely behind, her breath barely audible. The junction of critical systems loomed ahead, a web of cables and blinking lights. A permit office window loomed just beyond it, its glass dark with static. Protocol dictated they needed to secure this window to access the ration dispensers. The window was secured by a biometric lock, requiring a valid system operator permit. An audit queue snaked around the corner, each person waiting their turn to present a permit and receive clearance. But the enforcers were closing in. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor with increasing urgency. I didn't mind that, mingled urgency. Talis pressed against the wall, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement outside. We need to go, she whispered urgently. Rukas nodded, his voice barely above a murmur. We can't just wait our turn. This is critical. Alberto, New and Kai, was she mad? A new system operator approached the permit office window, her permit visible on a small digital badge. She tapped on the glass, and the static cleared, revealing the image of an authorized system operator. Ruckus, Talais hissed. We have to move now. Ruckus gripped the edge of the window frame, trying to steady himself. The biometric scanner was positioned just above the door, his only path forward. He pressed his own permit badge against the glass, feeling the familiar vibration as it validated. But something was off. The system seemed slower than usual. System delay, he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with dread. We need to get inside, before they notice. Talise moved closer, her fingers brushing his arm. There's a side door 2 meters down. We can use it. Ruckus nodded and pushed open the small metal door without making a sound. They slipped through into a narrow hallway, the air thick with the faint scent of ozone. Inside, the hallway was empty, save for the dim glow from emergency lights. Ruckus and Tallis moved quickly, but silently along the corridor. Their movements restricted by the need to avoid detection. The junction of critical systems lay ahead, its blinking lights, a stark contrast to the darkened hallways they had just traversed. They approached it cautiously, their breaths barely audible. Ruckus reached out to touch the control panel, his fingers brushing against cold metal. A new protocol required minimizing movements. Any sudden actions could trigger an alert. He inserted his permit into a slot and waited for the green light that would confirm access. The delay was longer than usual. Talisa's eyes narrowed as she watched. The green light finally blinked on, but it was 2, later 3 pairs of enforcer boots echoed down the hallway toward them. Ruckus turned to Talis, his voice a low whisper. "We under it." In. Talisa's eyes widened, and they both knew their complicity had just increased exponentially. Ruckus crouched behind a junction panel, his breath visible in the cold air of the maintenance corridor. Talis stood beside him, both hands on their utility belts. Protocols are always so slow. I should have anticipated this. A red light began to blink on the junction panel display, signaling an intrusion alert. The notice board overhead flickered with static, then showed a message. System intrusion detected. Ruckus cursed softly and quickly inputted override codes into his datapad. He glanced at Talis, who nodded in agreement. They had done this countless times before, hacking the ration dispensers to ensure they could feed themselves without drawing too much attention. The system's response was immediate. A series of whirring noises filled the air as the dispensers began their audit sequence. Ruckus gritted his teeth, knowing each beep was a reminder of their complicity in this operation. A red light flashed on the junction panel again, indicating an approaching patrol team. The enforcers were closing in fast. Thales grabbed Ruckus's arm and pulled him forward towards the notice board. Quickly, she whispered urgently, her voice barely audible over the machine noise. Ruckus scanned the notice board for a familiar red notice. Critical Systems Access Request. He quickly typed out their request, adding in necessary keywords to bypass additional checks. The notice appeared, and he watched as it slowly disappeared into the queue. The enforcers were within 50 meters now, their heavy boots echoing off the metal walls. Ruckus's heart pounded with a mix of dread and urgency. He could feel the tension building around them like a thick fog. He knew they needed to act fast before the patrol reached the junction panel. Junction panel. With a quick nod to Talis, they both took off down the corridor, their footsteps muffled by the heavy boots and system-generated noise. They sprinted towards the dispensers, the notice board now showing multiple pending requests. Ruckus hoped that the delay would buy them enough time. He reached the dispenser and began to manipulate the controls with practiced precision. The light from the screen flickered as he worked, illuminating his pale face in stark contrast to the dim hallway. Ruckus's fingers moved swiftly over the interface, bypassing security checks and diverting a ration of credits to their account. The dispenser whirred, and a small amount of credits appeared on the notice board. He quickly signed off, hoping it would be enough to keep them fed until they could think of another solution. But as he turned to leave, he noticed that the dispensers had gone silent. A red light blinked ominously on each one, indicating an error in their code. The system was rejecting their attempt. Talise stopped short and looked at him with a mix of frustration and fear. "We need to find another way," she said, her voice strained. Rukas nodded, his eyes scanning the notice board again. His heart sank as he saw that the enforcers had reached the junction panel just as they left. The red lights were now flashing furiously, alerting everyone of their presence. "Quickly, Winrangaral," Rukas urged, grabbing Talise's arm and pulling her back down the corridor. They ran towards another junction, hoping to find a way out that wouldn't lead them straight into the enforcer's path. But as they turned the corner, Rukas heard the distant sound of heavy boots pounding behind them on, a clear indication that their escape was cut short. The hallway ahead was blocked by a security door, and the system's red light signaled an alarm. They had run out of options. Rukas braced for the moment when the enforcers would break down the door and confront them. The only question now was how they would be punished for their actions. They stood there, facing the impending confrontation, the notice board flickering with static as if mocking them. Rukas knelt beside the control panel, his breath misting in the cool air of the maintenance corridor. The security door, normally an unobtrusive feature, now stood stubbornly between them and freedom. Security. Protocol mandates immediate response to intrusions. When were you lying? The enforcer patrol was closing fast. I don't think what can rail, and new in Nebraska County, not merging fast. Rukas sounds. Heart raced as he fumbled with the controls, fingers barely able to grasp the interface. He needed to override the security door before they reached it. A sudden beep cut through the silencer. QQ for a shuttle check had just been delayed. Rukas cursed softly and typed in the override code. The screen flickered, then stabilized, showing a countdown now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 dots. With a final touch, he initiated the bypass sequence. The door hissed open with a quiet whine, barely audible over the distant hum of the station. They had a minute at most before the patrol arrived. Rukas sprinted down the corridor, Talise close behind. Their breathing was labored in the confined space. A single dim light fixture cast long shadows that twisted around their legs. Complicity, detector, status loss imminent, Watchman, window noir. Rukas' radio crackled to life just as they reached the shuttle bay. "Rukas, where are you?" came Talis's voice, strained and urgent. "I'm en route," Rukas replied, his voice steady despite the urgency. He knew he had only one chance now, either get into the shuttle before the patrol or face severe consequences. The doors to the shuttle bay opened with a metallic screech as they rushed inside. The interior was dimly lit, and the smell of ozone filled Rukas' nostrils. He grabbed for a seat, his fingers barely fitting around the handle. "Shuttle bay security will perform an audit. That structure, I want not nigh I tell you. Kevin Roll, pretty sure, Baseke, or Bucky. Quick!" Talise hissed, pulling him forward. They both scrambled into their seats as the doors began to close with a mechanical thud. The shuttle lurched forward, leaving the station behind in a blur of motion. Rukas' mind raced. He had managed to evade capture for now, but the system would be on high alert. Complicity was an offense that carried heavy penalties, loss of status, reduced rations, even forced labor. The cost of their action hung heavily between them as the shuttle accelerated into space. Rukas gripped the edge of the shuttle bay door, watching the enforcer patrol sweep through the corridor like a tide, the metallic hiss of air escaping from the stationar's pressure system was the only sound in the vast bay. Security protocol, mandates an audit every hour on the hour. The last of the patrol was closing in on the far side of the bay. Rukas glanced at Thales, her eyes reflecting the cold light of the stationar's interior. Or no or never I'll, she whispered. Winchon had our own about time, and abstainer. Thales nodded, her fingers tightening around the thermal detonator hidden in her pockets. They had to board that shuttle before security zeroed in on their complicity. A queue of personnel moved through a shift change turnstile, their cards swiping with mechanical precision. Rukas forced herself to look away from the approaching enforcers and focus on the turnstiles. The metal barrier hissed into place, granting entry to one group while cutting off another. Complicity status loss imminent. Security will review all access logs soon. The shuttle bay door began to open, a slow mechanical groan that echoed through the vast space. Rukas and Thales hurried toward it, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of the deck. A final swish of metal as the door parted, revealing the sleek interior of the shuttle. Rukas Sans hand found the side hatch, pressing the release button with a shaky finger. The compartment popped open, ready to swallow them whole. The Enforcer Patrol was only 10 meters away now, their heavy boots thudding in an unchanging rhythm that seemed to slow time itself. Rukas scrambled inside, her suit crinkling against the shuttle's lining as she pulled herself up and over. Thales followed, her breath quickening as they settled into the seats, the thermal detonator still warm in her pocket. Warm in her pocket. A final hiss from the bay door signaled their escape, but not before Rukas caught a glimpse of the Enforcer's harsh faces through the window. Their eyes met for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of their shared risk. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and Rukas felt the slight vibration as it began its descent into the airlock. She glanced at Telly, who nodded once in return, before the shuttle door sealed with an insistent hiss. Complicity, status loss. Imminent. Security will review all access logs soon. The shuttle's engines roared louder, pulling them from the station and into the cold void beyond. Rukas let out a shaky breath as they ascended, but she knew the danger was far from over. The complicity status would be reviewed sooner than expected, and her name would be on the list. What now? What now? Shuttle bay lights flicker overhead, casting eerie shadows on the metal floor. I pull my cloak tighter around me, trying to ignore the cold sweat trickling down my spine. 10 meters away, enforcers move methodically, their boots clomping softly against the deck. The shuttle door creaks open, revealing a dimly lit interior with empty seats and an unlit console. The low hum of systems whirs in the background, the only sound in the vast expanse of the bay. The protocol mandates hourly audits. I can feel the weight of that rule pressing down on me. Status loss imminent, I mutter to myself, my voice barely audible over the soft hiss of airlocks. Complicity, status loss imminent, Procto. I step inside and close the door behind me, the metal clunking softly. I watch the enforcers from a distance. They're still 10 meters away and focused on their patrol. A thermal detonator is wedged in my pocket, a cold, hard reminder of the desperation driving me. The console lights up with a soft green glow, revealing a few buttons and readouts. I need to enter the correct access code to start the shuttle's systems. The protocol requires it. Failure could result in immediate shutdown or worse. I fumble for the code, my fingers trembling slightly as I type in the sequence. 3725. The console whirs and hums, and a green light blinks on, indicating approval. I glance at the enforcers. Again a 2. Close. I feel the familiar hum of their approaching patrol. Mr. Nani, and the shuttle begins to warm up, its systems coming online, with a series of low clicks and whirs. I slide into one of the seats, trying not to think about the consequences if this fails. The door to the bay opens once more, but now it turns too late. The enforcers are inside, their presence barely registering as they move past me, without pause. Access granted. The console announces. Its voice crisp and clinical. Shuttle, ready for departure. The countdown begins on the screen. 10, 9, water, 9, 8, danger, What? Complicity status loss. Imminent, I repeat to myself, my heart racing despite my efforts to remain calm. The enforcers are only a few meters away now, their eyes briefly locking onto me as they continue their patrol. 5, 4, 3, 1. I push the thermal detonator against the console, feeling its weight in my pocket. The countdown continues. 2. 1. 1. Wall or no one. System. Override initiated, the console hisses. 0. Departure sequence engaged. The shuttle lurches forward, pulling away from the station with a jolt that makes me lean back. The enforcers are still patrolling, their movements too slow to catch up as I escape into the void. But the cost is clear. Complicity, status loss imminent. No one will know I was here until it's too late. I peer through the cracked window of the permit office, my breath visible in the cold air. The glass is coated with a thin layer of frost from the 0-degree temperatures outside. I tap impatiently on the metal frame, trying to keep my fingers warm. The enforcer's protocol mandates hourly audits. Failure means shut down. A strict queue of workers waits just beyond the door, their faces masked and expressions unreadable. Each face is a reminder of the complicity status loss that looms over me. A sharp knock at the door breaks the tension. Well, when this start, whoa, all the person chain. I step back, heart quickening slightly. May. The door creaks open, and I see the shuttle bay. Guardian's eyes scan the room with a practiced eye. Reports, he demands gruffly. I hesitate, then recite my status and the reason for needing a permit. He nods briskly and steps aside, allowing me access. Proceed, but be quick. I step out into the bustling shuttle bay. The rhythmic hum of machinery is punctuated by the occasional clank as shuttles are loaded or unloaded. One such shuttle catches my eye off. It's an old model, its paint chipped and faded. It taunts the one I need. The countdown has begun. 10, 9, 8. The distant alarm blares. The enforcers are on patrol. Their boots thud against the metallic floor with a steady rhythm that seems to mock me. 7, 6. I approach the old shuttle, its door already unlocked by my access permit. 5, 4. The Guardian returns, his steps heavy and deliberate. 3, 2. Status, he demands, his voice low. I am nearly done, I say, my voice steady, but tinged with urgency. Just a few more minutes. Otherwise center, wait, about the island. Line the Jane. Outworks, then there. Diligent stay. 1, 0. I rush inside, the door closing behind me as the alarm outside intensifies. The enforcer's stern face looms in the window, his eyes narrowed and unyielding. I start. The shuttle's engines, feeling the vibrations through my feet. The door to the bay begins to close with a loud metallic thud. The Guardian leans against it, arms crossed, waiting for me to emerge. "Hurry up next time," he says. "Nichinburn. Harold Contointero. Popchero. Ernalson. I nod, but there's no time to process his words as the engines roar into life, and I push the shuttle forward. The door closes behind us, sealing the tension inside. The Enforcer's watchful eye remains fixed on the bay entrance, his presence a constant reminder of the cost of failure. And yet, what happens if we do not succeed? High Engineer Ianto stands in the dimly lit shuttle bay, his eyes scanning the notice board. The metal walls are cool under his fingers as he presses the clipboard to his chest, holding it like a talisman against the creeping dread. New Guardian Enforcer's protocol mandates hourly audits. Any delay means immediate shutdown and lockdown. The notice board lists the required permits for shuttle launches, each one a reminder of the strictures that govern our invisible labor. Ianto glances at the timer. 17:59. The clock ticks down to the next audit. In just 3 minutes. A faint buzzing echoes from his comlink. But it's not the usual security alert. It's the Enforcer's voice. Ianto, report to permit office window for immediate clearance. Ianto groans inwardly, knowing this could be a prelude to shut down. Ianto pulls out his pass and heads toward the notice board, feeling the weight of every second. Guardian Enforcers are everywhere in the shuttle bay, their presence a constant reminder of the protocols that bind us. Ianto pauses by the queue for rations, the scent of stale metal heavy in the air. A few workers around him mutter about the relentless audits and the complicity status loss they fear. He pushes his clipboard onto the notice board and considers his options, aware of the mounting tension. Ianto hesitates at the queue for rations, noticing a worker named Tyra, who looks unusually pale under her mask. Her eyes meet his briefly, before she ducks behind a stack of crates. Ianto continues to the permit office window, his heart rate picking up slightly. Despite his efforts to remain calm, the window is empty when he arrives, but the Enforcer's presence is palpable in the air. "Jarax," comes the low voice from the shadows. "Major, your permit is ready." Ianto takes the clipboard, noting the strict timestamps and signatures required for each clearance. He hands it to Tyra, who nods curtly before disappearing into the crowd. Back in the shuttle bay, Ianto checks his fuel levels one last time, his fingers fumbling slightly as he adjusts the controls. The old shuttle hums softly under his touch, its systems a testament to the ingenuity of the galaxy's backroom mechanics. The clock ticks down. Announcements, voice-zero. 17:56, 17:55. Ianto starts the engine, the deep rumble filling the bay. He glances at the Enforcer's protocol on his clipboard again. Any delay means immediate shutdown and lockdown. Ianto's hand trembles as he punches in the last command sequence, the shuttle trembling to life. "You have 30 seconds until your next audit." The Enforcer's voice crackles over Jarax's comlink. Ianto grits his teeth and pushes harder, his heart racing as the fuel gauges rise. The old shuttle lurches forward, its engines straining against the limitations of age and protocol. Minutes later, Ianto Jarax is on the move, the Enforcer's voice fading into the background noise of the galaxy. The threat of the next audit hangs over Ianto like a looming spectre. The spectre of the next audit hangs over us, waiting to strike at any moment. The shuttle door closes with a metallic thud as Ianto pulls back on the control lever, the old ship rising into the sky. Ianto Jarax stood by the old shuttle, its rusted hull casting long shadows in the dim light of the shuttle bay. Tira, a worker known for her punctuality, hovered nearby, fidgeting with her gloves. Guardian Enforcer drones patrolled the bay at regular intervals, their presence a constant reminder that any delay could mean immediate shutdown and loss of access. Ianto's hands trembled slightly as he checked the last connection point. Procedure: ensure all systems are operational before launch. A rule embedded in the protocol, one that had become a mantra during audits. Each system check was critical. Failure meant complicity charges, a serious offense. Tira stepped forward, her eyes darting nervously, between Ianto and the Guardian enforcers. Her breaths were shallow, almost imperceptible. Any delay in launch could result in increased scrutiny. Ianto knew that Tira's unease was unusual. She usually handled her tasks with precision. Now, she seemed on edge, almost whispering to herself under her breath. This small change in behavior hinted at something deeper, something troubling beneath the surface. Tira reached for a nearby tool, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady them. She looked up, meeting Ianto's gaze, briefly before quickly averting her eyes. Ianto's stomach churned. He couldn't afford to show any signs of hesitation or doubt. The Guardian enforcers were relentless in their audits. Missing a single step could mean complicity charges. With a deep breath, Ianto began the final checks. His fingers moved swiftly, but deliberately, each connection secure. The old shuttle was critical for today's maintenance run. Any delay would ripple through the entire system, causing widespread inconvenience and increased scrutiny. Procedure: final systems check before launch. Every moment stretched longer than it should have. Tira watched intently, her eyes never leaving Ianto's hands as he completed his last task. The tension between them was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of their shared risk. Finally, the last sensor beeped green, indicating all systems were operational. Ianto stepped back, relief washing over him, for just a moment before he turned to Tira. "I'll let ours do this all," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Tira nodded, her eyes still wary. Together, they approached the shuttle, their movements precise and calculated. The Guardian enforcers were closing in. Ianto could feel them watching, waiting for any sign of deviation. Any mistake now would be catastrophic. With a final glance at Tira, Ianto climbed into the shuttle, his heart pounding harder than it should have. The door closed with a soft thud, sealing him inside the old vessel as he initiated the launch sequence. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it began to move, its engines rumbling faintly in protest. Ianto watched through the viewports, the dim light from the bay casting an eerie glow on his face. What would happen if they were caught? The Guardian enforcers were closing in, their drones circling the shuttle with increasing urgency. The old shuttle's systems groaned under the strain of its age, but it moved forward nonetheless. Ianto's mind raced, thoughts of complicity charges and potential violence flashing through his head. He knew that any mistake now could mean immediate shutdown or worse. The shuttle's engines roared louder as it gained speed, pulling away from the bay. The Guardian enforcers saw. Drones hovered in their wake, their presence a constant reminder of the danger they faced. What would happen if they were caught? The old shuttle continued its journey, leaving behind the tense atmosphere of the shuttle bay and venturing out into the vastness of space, where the consequences of their actions might unfold. Ianto Jarax checked the last panel on the old shuttle, his eyes scanning for any hint of malfunction. The hum of the engines was steady, but something felt off. The steady hum of the engines was interrupted by a distant metallic whine that grew louder with each passing second. Guardian Enforcer drones are dispatched upon any system failure to ensure compliance and prevent sabotage. Tira hands shook as she typed the final command, her knuckles white on the keyboard. The drone hovered closer, its lights flashing red. Ianto glanced at his watch. He had 10 seconds before the drone arrived. "Come on," he muttered, fingers flying over the console. He had 10 more systems to verify, in the next 5 minutes before the shuttle launched per protocol. The drone landed a meter away, its presence unmissable. Tira flinched, her breathing quickening. What's still? Ianto continued his checks, his mind racing through the remaining protocols. Single sentence, emphatic. The oxygen supply line is at 98% A, just enough to pass the audit, but not optimal for a long flight. Ianto's heart pounded as he hit the final button, confirming the launch sequence. The shuttle bay doors began to close, sealing him, and Tira inside with the old vessel. A low hum filled the air as the engines kicked into high gear, the walls of the shuttle bay pulsing with pressure. Single sentence, emphatic. Well, going through the queue now. Time is running out. I shout. The Guardian Enforcer. Drone hovered closer, its cameras scanning Ianto and Tira. The door to the shuttle finally sealed shut, isolating them from the outside world. The interior lights flickered once before stabilizing, casting a harsh blue glow on the control panels. Single sentence, emphatic. We're in, but we still need to make it through the launch sequence without a glitch. Sealed in the shuttle bay. Ianto's breath came out as mist in the cold air. Tira stood beside him, her eyes glued to the console. The verification screen blinked, showing 98% oxygen left. Not enough for the whole flight. She whispered. Just barely. Ianto muttered, his fingers flying over the control pad. He had 5 minutes to complete the checklists before the Guardian Enforcer drone intervened. The main engines whined softly as he checked the power systems. The red light flickered on for a moment and then off, normalizing. Our engines are good. Our sing Tira's face paled slightly. We can't afford any failures. Understood. Ianto pressed his palms against the console, feeling the vibration of the engines beneath his fingers. He moved to the environmental controls, his breath visible in the dim light. The humidity level indicated 45%, but it needed 50%. Our humidity needs adjustment out, he announced, fiddling with the settings. The screen confirmed the change, but the number hovered at 47%. Only 3 minutes left, Tira said, her voice strained. Ianto double-checked the navigation system's coordinates. The screen showed a green checkmark, but something was not right. Our outer coordinates are off by 1 decimal place. Tira's hand twitched as she tried to adjust it herself, but Ianto stopped her. Let me, he said, his fingers working quickly. A red light flashed ominously on the security system monitor. Security protocols are failing. Shit. Tara swore softly, stepping back. Ianto cursed under his breath, his mind racing. I need to fix this fast. The Guardian Enforcer Dronas' presence became more palpable in the sealed space, its mechanical hum growing louder. The countdown timer ticked down to 2:30 minutes. Ianto wondered if he could override the security. Ianto asked, not looking up from the console. Tira nodded, her hands shaking as she reached for the override protocol. Risky on, she warned. Ianto hesitated, then hit the key sequence needed to bypass the system. The screen flickered and stabilized, showing a green light. Almost there. Ianto said, barely above a whisper. He checked the last item on his list. Life support systems. The oxygen levels were at 98%, but Tiras' face was turning ashen. Oh, if we cannot make it, what can we do? She asked softly. Get us out of here, Ianto replied, though he wasn't entirely sure how. The final checklist item confirmed everything else. The main console beeped once, signaling the completion of all pre-flight checks. Good. Good. Tiras. I scanned the room, her hand reaching for something in her pocket. A small toolkit she had brought just in case. Ianto said, moving to the shuttle doors. He turned the key and waited. The door hissed open with a slight delay, but it opened fully, revealing the dark expanse of space beyond. Ianto stepped inside, then turned back to Tyra. Do you want to come in? Oh, sorry. They're in their well. Or in this Sherry. She hesitated, her hand still on the toolkit. What if something goes wrong? Right. We're in this together. Ianto said, his voice steady. He started the engines and watched as the shuttle began to move. The dronar's presence was gone, but the tension remained palpable. Ianto took a deep breath, starting the countdown for takeoff. Ianto's voice trembled as he whispered the countdown. 30 seconds, his fingers gripping the controls tightly. The shuttle lifted slowly off the ground, Ianto's fingers barely holding onto the controls as they ascended into the void. The final seconds ticked by like minutes. What's up, bro? Machine symbol. Like minutes, so 10, 5, 3, 2. The engines roared louder, and the shuttle sped away from the bay, leaving behind only the cold, empty space of the old shuttle bay. Ianto's fingers dance over the console, inputs racing in a blur of code. The overhead lights flicker intermittently, casting an orange glow on his face. Tira stands by, her toolkit clutched tightly as she observes Ianto's frantic work. 5 minutes remaining. The shuttle bay is eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from a sensor. A small glowing light panel near the entrance reads 5, 0. Tira glances at it, then back to Ianto, her brow furrowed in concern. Status update. Enforcer drone intones from its corner, its voice mechanical, yet insistent. Ianto pauses, mid-command, and turns to Tyra. We're okay for now, he mutters, though his eyes betray a flicker of doubt. He quickly reruns the diagnostics on the mainframe. Fingers flying over the keyboard. The monitor displays a series of green check marks, but Ianto howers. Gut tells him something isn't right. It's barely holding, he whispers, voice strained. We need to get this online fast. Tira nods grimly and steps forward, placing her hand on his shoulder. Litars, finish it together. She pulls out a small tool from her kit, inspecting its tip before carefully attaching it to the console. Ianto starts to input new commands, his hands moving with practiced speed. The screen begins to fill with complex data streams, each one more critical than the last. Tira watches intently, ready to intervene if needed. A sudden alarm chimes from a nearby control panel, startling them both. The Enforcer droner's voice sounds again. Security protocols failing, oxygen levels declining. Ianto curses softly and swivels his chair towards the entrance. A small sign above it reads our oxygen rations. 2 minutes remaining. Panic sets in as he realizes they might not have enough time. Quick, Ianto breathes, his voice barely audible over the growing urgency. We need to bypass the secondary firewall. Wangsun, Collector Binaries. Tira nods and starts typing rapidly on her own console. Fingers moving with a practiced rhythm. They work side by side, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. The air in the shuttle bay feels thin now, each breath an effort. The mainframe whirs louder as Ianto's commands take hold, lights flickering wildly around them. A final command is issued, and the screen confirms the shuttle is online. Is a digenter, is a doel, not stinko, not what, or don't base you. Launch sequence initiated. Right now, an internet turned around home. Then I stigun, I could not chase it. Tira steps back, her toolkit clutched to her chest. We did it, she says, though there's a hint of doubt in her voice. Ianto nods, but his eyes are still fixed on the monitor, checking for any signs of failure. A final beep sounds from the enforcer drone. Person I start, and I can't down your couch, but she not make content here. Oxygen levels critical. Initiating intervention. Protocol, Dutch-Toring. Ianto's heart races as he watches the countdown. Clock at 2-1-0. The door to the shuttle bay slides open with a hiss, and the enforcer drone steps in, his presence looming ominously. The drone's red light scans the room, analyzing their situation. Security protocols breached, it states matter-of-factly. Ianto and Tira exchange a glance, both knowing the gravity of the moment. They stand there, facing the inevitable, as the enforcer drone's mechanical arm extends to seal the door, cutting off all access to the shuttle bay. Ianto's eyes flick to the oxygen counter, counting down seconds. 120. Ianto, something got a name. I don't know. 119. Comistero, 119. The door hissed shut behind him, sealing off the shuttle bay. Oh, under emergency protocols, all non-essential systems must be shut down to conserve power and maintain key functions. The enforcer drone loomed large in the control room, its red lights blinking ominously. Tira's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent but muted by static. Ianto, you need Dahl. I know, he said, his voice steady despite the panic gnawing at him. The notice board above the door flashed a warning. Shuttle bay access locked. Oxygen levels are dropping faster than expected due to sealed bay and critical diagnostics miss. He turned to the console, fingers flying over the keys as he initiated an override protocol. Status report, he barked at the drone. Why is this door locked? Access denial. The drone replied in its cold mechanical voice. Emergency protocols engaged. Tira's static-laden message cut through. Iantoa. I'm on it. Onese arrives. He focused, typing faster as alarms began to chime softly in the background. Emergency protocols override all non-essential functions to prevent system failure. The screen flickered, displaying a list of critical systems. Ianto's heart skipped a beat as he saw that life support had been prioritized over diagnostics. Why isn't this door opening? He demanded, his voice rising with frustration. Life support priority. The drone responded, its tone unchanging. Oxygen levels are critically low. Mission. Tira's message grew clearer. Ianto, I can override, he shouted, fingers flying faster as he tried to find a way. Past the security measures. Oxygen levels have dropped below 100 seconds remaining. The enforcer drone is now actively surveilling Ianto's actions. The notice board buzzed again, this time with a red alert. Critical oxygen levels. The lights in the bay dimmed further as the countdown continued relentlessly. Tira's voice became more frantic over the intercom. Oh, Ianto, stop! I can't tell. He cried back, his mind racing. Oh, managed to catch it. Oh, that's not understanding. His mind racing. He hit the override key and watched as the door began to unlock with a whirring noise. The countdown clock on the notice board blinked, showing 80 seconds left. Ianto's breath came in short gasps as he hurried to prepare the shuttle for launch. Almost there, he muttered, his hands shaking slightly. Under emergency protocols, all personnel are required to remain in designated areas until oxygen levels stabilize. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. Ianto hesitated, looking back at Tira's face on the intercom. "Where's Stein?" Her eyes were wide with fear and urgency. With urgency, oxygen levels have dropped below, 50 seconds remaining. Enforcer drone is now actively pursuing Ianto. "Go," she urged, her voice a whisper over the static. "You need Tar." Ianto turned and sprinted out of the bay, his boots echoing through the empty corridors as he raced toward the shuttle hangar. The notice board flickered, now showing 30 seconds left, before oxygen levels would drop below critical. Under emergency protocols, all personnel are required to evacuate immediately upon oxygen levels falling below 60 seconds. The drone whirred behind him, its lights flashing red as it followed his every move. Ianto's heart hammered in his chest as he reached the shuttle and yanked open the hatch. "Go, go, go!" Tira's voice screamed over the static as he hurried inside, slamming the door shut with a final clang. The oxygen counter on the notice board went dark, showing 0 seconds remaining. The drone's lights flickered off as it turned away, its mission apparently accomplished. Shuttle has launched. However, critical diagnostics were missed due to time pressure, and oxygen levels are now critically low in the bay. Ianto's breath was ragged as he looked around the shuttle. He needed to find a way to send a distress signal, but his mind raced with unanswered questions. How much longer could they survive before the Enforcer drone returned? What would it do when it found them? "Whoever is up there," he whispered. "Are you watching?" Ianto's hands trembled as he keyed the launch sequence, his eyes scanning the shuttle's systems. A critical diagnostics check was skipped. Oxygen levels were critically low. The Enforcer drone's surveillance. Lights flickered in the dimly lit bay. "Lights still barrel and dimly. Leo need Belgay." Ianto's fingers fly across the console, but a warning light blinks redart. Oxygen reserves are only 30% of nominal capacity. Emergency protocols prioritize life support over diagnostics. Critical systems were not fully checked due to time pressure. "Hurrah!" Voice crackles through the comms, her tone urgent. "Ianto, we need those diagnostics run. Our cylinders are showing up. The Enforcer drone might be tracking us." "Alvin, Nishanano, Majiang Baneri, Narendan Spiral, Melchun, Lord." Ianto's breath catches as he glances at the drone's surveillance feed. Its sensors are locked onto him. Single sentence paragraph. The shuttle lurches forward, engines roar into life, but the false sense of security is quickly dispelled by the harsh reality of their situation. Transit. Shuttle check continues. "I don't recall that on the nation track. Can't continuation. The trouble check." Ianto's hands twitch on the console, fingers barely touching the controls as he monitors the oxygen levels. The shuttle bay is silent, except for the hum of machinery and the faint whirring of the Enforcer drone's sensors. 30% oxygen left. 14% oxygen left, Barney. The engines roar to life, a deep rumble that echoes through the metal shell. "Mister, my only can't even touch." Ianto watches the readouts, his eyes narrowing as he calculates. The airlock doors open with a hiss, signaling the shuttle is pressurized enough for departure. He turns to Tira, who stands by a small console. "Launch sequence initiated," she says, her voice calm but strained. "We need to confirm the systems are stable." Ianto nods, focusing on the diagnostics screen. The drone's presence looms in the corner of his vision, its active surveillance making him feel like Itas staring into his soul. He knows the Enforcer drone is watching everything, every breath. Emergency protocols will shut us down if oxygen levels drop below 25%. The shuttle systems are running smoothly, but Ianto cannot shake the feeling that something is off. He taps a few more keys and runs a quick diagnostic on the life support system. The screen flickers with red alerts are low efficiency, potential failure. Status lights are flashing. He says, his voice low. We need to get this checked. Tira steps closer, her eyes scanning the console for any signs of trouble. Can we reroute some air from the maintenance bay? We have a few extra reserves there. Ianto shakes his head. Mauricio, Nando shakes his head. Not enough time. The Enforcer drone will spot it if we try anything suspicious. Besides, we need to conserve what art's left. The drone's sensors shift in response, its presence growing more insistent. 30% oxygen. Left. Tira takes a deep breath, her hands clenching lightly on the console. Wayanda are running low. She says, her voice firm. Aral, do you think we can hold out long enough to launch? Ianto looks at her, his mind racing. We have to try. We can't just cancel the mission. He hits a few more keys, running a rapid diagnostic on the shuttle's systems. The screen updates, with critical information, critical failures in multiple subsystems. He knows they are running on borrowed time. Emergency protocols will initiate in 10 minutes. If oxygen levels drop below 25%, watch. The drone's sensors are still active, its presence unyielding. Ianto can feel the weight of its scrutiny as he works frantically to stabilize the systems. The shuttle's engines rattle louder, their power struggling against the growing internal pressure. Can you handle the launch? Tira asks, her voice steady but anxious. Ianto glances at the screen, his mind racing through the checklist. We have to. We cannot. Let them shut us down. Well, the drone's sensors lock onto Ianto's movements, his presence a constant reminder of the risk that they are undertaking. Oxygen levels are dropping faster than expected. Ianto's fingers move with increasing urgency as he tries to override the failing systems. The shuttle's engines roar louder, their power struggling against the growing internal pressure. Tira steps closer, her hands on his shoulders. We cannot do this alone, she says softly. Ianto nods, his eyes fixed on the diagnostics. Ianto glances at the clock, aware of their dwindling time. Time. The Enforcer drone's sensors are still active, its presence unyielding. Oxygen levels are critically low. Critically low. The shuttle's engines surge with a final roar as Ianto hits the launch button. The doors close with a hiss, sealing them inside for the journey ahead. The drone sensors lock onto their position, its presence a constant reminder of the cost they are paying. Ianto and Tira watch the launch sequence unfold on the screen. The shuttle's engines flare to life, pushing it into space as the bay doors close behind them. The oxygen levels are dangerously low, but for now, they have made it out. Oxygen levels are critically low. The Enforcer drone's sensors follow their trajectory, its presence a dark shadow in the distance. Ianto checks the oxygen levels, his eyes narrowing as they read 23%. The shuttle surges into space, leaving the station behind. The emergency protocols will kick in soon. If he doesn't boost the oxygen, the Enforcer drone's presence is a constant hum, its sensors scanning the area with an eerie efficiency. Ianto's fingers dance over the console, inputting commands to stabilize the shuttle and prepare for re-entry. He needs a few more minutes. He needs a few more minutes. Tira peers out the window, her face pale. How much longer? So, not long, Ianto says, though he knows it could be too late. The Enforcer drone shifts position, its cold mechanical presence adding to the tension in the shuttle bay. The oxygen levels drop another percentage point out. Ianto hits a few more buttons, trying to override the failing systems. We need to boost the oxygen. Oh, well, so. I'll do that necessarily. He pulls up the emergency protocols list, his heart pounding despite the attempt to keep it steady. The Enforcer drone's sensors lock onto him, its red lead eyes glowing with intensity. The protocol he needs is at the bottom of the list, marked as a high-risk operation. He can't afford the scrutiny now. But time is running out. Ianto glances at the clocker. 9 minutes and 45 seconds left. He types in the override code, his fingers trembling slightly. The Enforcer drone's sensors pulse with activity, its mechanical whirring growing louder. The oxygen levels dip to 21%. Watch with Barry. And the orange down. I'll with me now. Ianto swallows hard, focusing on the screen as the protocol runs. The shuttle bay lights flicker ominously, and Tira gasps softly beside him. Ianto grits his teeth, willing the system to respond. The emergency protocols activate, their red warning lights flashing menacingly. The Enforcer drone's sensors pulse with renewed intensity, its presence a palpable threat. The oxygen levels finally start to rise, inching up towards safety. Ianto breathes a sigh of relief, though he knows it is short-lived. The Enforcer drone remains vigilant, its red lead eyes following their every move. What did you do? Tira asks in a whisper, her voice barely audible over the hum of the emergency systems. Ianto glances at her, his heart racing. Just a little. Something to buy us some time. He knows it's only temporary. They need to find a way out for good. The Enforcer drone's sensors lock onto them again, its red eyes tracking their every move. The oxygen levels are back up to 23%, but the emergency protocols will still trigger in less than 2 minutes. Ianto can feel the tension knotting in his stomach as he realizes they have a limited window of opportunity. The Enforcer drone's sensors pulse with renewed intensity, its presence a constant reminder that their escape is far from safe. Ianto's breath hitched as he tapped into the oxygen generator controls, feeling the Stationar's systems hum beneath his fingers. The Enforcer drone's sensors pinged louder in the background, his presence palpable even through the comm's silence. Permit office window. The large window of the permit office provided a view of the bustling shuttle bay, where techs and scientists rushed about like ants in an orderly swarm. Ianto had requested a permit to access the oxygen generator, now hanging from his belt. The paper was thin, almost transparent, but its legitimacy was the only barrier between him and this critical operation. Hands trembled slightly as he typed in the commands needed to override the emergency protocols. The screen flashed green, confirming the change, but the Enforcer drone's sensors buzzed with heightened activity. A red light flickered on the drone's console, its eyes narrowing as it zeroed in on Ianto. Permit office window. A tech, oblivious to the tension, walked past the permit office window and glanced inside. He glanced inside and saw Ianto for a moment before walking past. The moment was brief, but enough to confirm that the Enforcer drone had detected something amiss. Ianto's knuckles turned white as he held his breath, willing himself to stay calm. The station's emergency protocols would trigger in less than 2 minutes if not maintained, while time seemed to stretch endlessly. The Enforcer drone sensor lights flashed rapidly, and Ianto could almost hear the whirring of its internal systems, analyzing every movement within the shuttle bay. His heart pounded harder, not because of fear, but from the strain of maintaining composure under scrutiny. Permit office window. A technician approached the permit office window, his face a mix of curiosity and concern as he peered inside. Everything okay in there? Wire. Ah? He asked softly, tapping on the glass with his gloved finger. Nice-o, Mitchell. Ianto swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. Just finalizing some protocols, he replied, hoping to placate him without drawing more attention. The tech nodded and moved away, but not before Ianto caught a glimpse of the Enforcer Dronar's intense focus. Its sensors locked onto his position. Ianto held his breath, each moment feeling like an endless stretch of time. Ianto's fingers danced across the console, trying to mask any sign of urgency. He knew the Enforcer drone would escalate soon, and he had only seconds left before it became undeniable that something critical was happening here. From its office window, amidst, a final check on the oxygen levels showed a slight improvement. Ianto exhaled in relief, but the Enforcer Dronar's sensors continued to pulse with urgency, its red lights flashing more intensely now. The tech, outside the window, glanced back, his face contorting into a look of genuine concern. His mind raced as he considered his next move. He had drawn too much attention. The Enforcer drone would soon demand an explanation. If it did, the stationar's protocols might trigger prematurely, leading to chaos and potentially drawing even more unwanted scrutiny. The window pane shivered slightly in the chill of the air, a small detail that added to Ianto's growing unease. He knew what was at stake now. His complicity in these emergency protocols could jeopardize his entire project, and possibly worse. Ianto's hands trembled as he made the final adjustments, knowing every second counted. The Enforcer drone's sensors continued to pulse, its presence a constant reminder of the cost of his actions. He had risked everything for this critical moment, but now the price was becoming increasingly clear. The window pane shivered again, and Ianto's eyes darted nervously toward it. Ianto's gaze flickered between the window and the notice board outside the permit office. Ianto tapped his fingers on the console, watching the notice board outside the permit office window. The LED lights flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow across the busy housing block. Emergency protocols are active. In 159. The Enforcer drone's presence grew more insistent, its red eyes tracking Ianto's every move. His tech outside had already noticed it too, his voice a low whisper through the comms link. "I stay sharp," he said. "I'm not around this." Ianto nodded, trying to focus on the notice board. "When our downtown, my steamer, we shouldn't rush out in public about our house." A new sign had appeared. "Our oxygen, rationing effective immediately." The text was barely visible in the dim light, but carried weighty implications. A queue formed at the rations desk outside. People milled about, their faces a mix of concern and resignation. When Ianto was to ensure these protocols ran smoothly, without drawing too much attention. No small feat, with an Enforcer drone hovering outside. The countdown to emergency protocol activation is 1 minute and 58 seconds. The notice board shifted again, this time showing a list of permit office delays due to air administrative issues. Ianto's heart skipped a beat as he realized the gravity of his situation. If the protocols triggered now, it would be chaos. Permits would be suspended, and the Enforcer drone would have perfect cover to investigate. A knock at the door broke through his thoughts. "Initiate." The tech was here, his face grim. "Irretriable. At the rations desk guard," he said. "You know, not me bell," he said. "Always young. Run out for permits for essential repairs. Initiate ordinary. I stay here ordinary. Where are Derrican in a berry?" Ianto's fingers flew across the console. "I don't imagine that hadn't prayed down." He needed to fix this before it escalated. The Enforcer Dronar's eyes narrowed, its body shifting into a more aggressive stance. The drone systems initiated emergency protocols with 1 minute and 57 seconds remaining. He could not afford any delays. Not now. 1-0. 1 days. Ianto made a quick decision, bypassing some of the less critical checks. The tech outside his window gave him a thumbs up before retreating back to his post. A loud thump came from behind the notice board. As Ianto adjusted the protocol settings, his hands were shaking slightly, but he forced himself to stay calm. The enforcer Dronar's eyes darted around the room, now fully aware of his tampering. Emergency protocols are active in 156. The tension was palpable. Now in large seal and basings. Time was running out, with each error potentially costing him dearly. Ianto's only hope was that this would buy him enough time to fix everything before the enforcer drone demanded an explanation, or worse, before the emergency protocols triggered on their own. A final knock at the door sounded, breaking the silence. The tech was back, his face pale but resolute. I need to address this now, he said softly. Ianto nodded, his mind racing. Wish still, window and me don't ride. What if they couldn't do out? Fix it in time. My general allowance. What would happen? When the enforcer drone demanded answers. Emergency protocols are active in 155. A tracker, Otiri. Ianto's fingers drummed on the desktop as he checked the permit for the 4th time. The drone's holoprojector flickered, casting an uncertain light over the room. Access to emergency protocols requires 3 sequential errors in procedure. Tekalai leaned closer, whispering, "What if they find out you bypass the rations?" Ianto shook his head, his eyes glued to the monitor. Oi, they will not die. This is just a minor error. Wow. The rations desk queue was growing longer, the line of people stretching like an endless ribbon outside the window. Ianto couldn't afford any more delays. The enforcer drone hovered closer, its mechanical eye tracking him with increasing scrutiny. Antoine's knuckles whitened as he typed in the final verification code. The screen flashed green, but a warning chirp sounded from the drone. Our system override detected, intoned in a monotone voice. A ripple of panic spread through the office as others looked up, their eyes narrowing. Ianto swallowed hard and quickly signed off on the permit, hoping to end this before more people noticed. Tech, I squeezed his shoulder. I don't mean well. Only Shedore. Tech alive. Squeezed his shoulder and said, "You all get through this." The Dronos. I locked onto them, its presence an oppressive weight in the air. Protocol trigger will result in a full administrative audit within 30 minutes. Ianto's breath caught as he realized the gravity of their situation. The permit issues now threatened to cascade into something far more serious. Administrative chaos that could spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The rations line outside grew longer, and Ianto could feel the weight of every one of our eyes on him. One mistake too many, and they would all face the consequences of this emergency protocol activation. The enforcer drone's eye scanned the room, its presence a constant reminder of their vulnerability. Would they get through this unnoticed, or was the galaxy about to witness a minor error turn into an administrative nightmare? How long until the rations run out for everyone in the housing block? Ianto's fingers danced across the keyboard, his knuckles pale as he typed in rapid succession. The holoprojector hummed softly beside him, casting dancing light on the rations line that was growing steadily longer. Protocol 273 mandates a full administrative audit if any unapproved rations are detected. The enforcer Dronos' scrutiny had been increasing. Its presence loomed like an ever-present storm cloud. The turnstile beeped as another batch of droids and civilians crossed into the rations office, adding to the queue. Ianto's gaze flickered from his screen to the door, counting heads, trying to estimate how much longer he could hold off the inevitable. A sharp knock on the door jolted him out of his calculations. Ianto, on resort, our right shell, I never seen my dot, our renaked, our Ianto. Ianto, what? Tech, a Lear's voice echoed softly. Just a moment, Ianto replied, fingers flying over the keyboard. Another droid approached, and the queue lengthened by one more. Protocol 273, and unapproved rations. Permit results in a full administrative audit within 30 minutes. The clock was ticking louder now. Tekalai stepped inside, his expression a mix of concern and support. Ianto, we need to secure that permit or the whole block will be on lockdown. Oh, Manalako. Ianto, our largest cell, our Niger. Ianto nodded, his mind racing. Weandra just a few more approvals away. He muttered, eyes never leaving the screen as he typed furiously. The enforcer dronar's sensor hummed louder, its presence palpable. Ianto knew it was watching. The dronar's protocol was to escalate any unapproved rations incidents to the highest levels of oversight. Another droid joined the queue, and the line stretched out like a writhing snake. The turnstile beeped again, adding another body to the growing mass. Tekalai leaned in close. Awaken art, let them catch us off guard. We need Tor. A sharp ring cut through the air as the enforcer dronar's sensor locked onto something amiss. Tor's heart pounded silently. 30 minutes until a full audit. The queue continued to grow, drawing more attention. Protocol 273. A delay in securing rations can result in immediate complicity, charges for all involved. Ianto's knuckles whitened as he typed faster, desperate to finish before the drone made its move. The enforcer dronar's sensor beeped insistently. Ianto's fingers still, his breath catching as he realized the protocol was about to trigger. The queue stretched out, now a dozen bodies long. Tech, Alai placed a hand on Ianto's shoulder. Mishadano, kick not out, Machanda, Raymajal, Well, our Urway can do this. Where nearly? Ianto's eyes darted between the screen and Tech Alai, then back again. Well, send my barrel, crap. Nishadai, Nisadan again, Rantajal, Lean. With a final keystroke, he submitted the last approval. The rations line seemed to pause for just a moment, an eternity in the growing tension. The enforcer dronar's sensor fell silent as Ianto leaned back, his fingers trembling. 30 minutes, until everything could come crashing down around them. The queue continued to grow, and Ianto knew they were one slip up away from a full audit that would jeopardize not just their rations permit, but the entire housing block's supply chain. What now? Ianto tapped the clipboard against the rations desk, his eyes scanning the never-ending line of faces, peering over stacks of papers and forms. The queue stretched out like a snaking river of concern, each person's expression a mix of desperation and hope. Protocol 273 mandates a full audit in 30 minutes. The enforcer drone's sensor beeped softly, drawing closer to the desk. Ianto's heart skipped a beat as he tried to keep his voice steady over the intercom. All rations personnel, report to your stations, he announced, his tone professional, yet tinged with urgency. A man in tattered clothes stepped forward, clutching a half-filled ration permit. His eyes flickered nervously between Ianto and the drone. He asked, "Can you help me get this through?" "No, I get this through. I'll come, sir," he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Another one. No coming out." Ianto sighed, taking the manar's form. He knew he was running out of time. The Enforcer drone's sensor was now directly over his shoulder, its presence an unwelcome reminder of the ticking clock. The rations line continued to grow, each person adding another layer of tension. A child tugged at her mother's sleeve, a small hand reaching for a ration form that Ianto could not see from this angle. Ianto submitted the last approval with a practiced motion, but there were still 2 more lines on the queue behind him. The drone's sensor moved closer, its presence now barely a meter away. The Enforcer drone's sensor beeped again, louder than before. It was scanning for any irregularities in the permit submissions. Ianto felt his hands tremble slightly as he worked to steady them. A woman behind the desk noticed the Enforcer drone, and her face paled. She started whispering frantic instructions to the other rations personnel, but it was too late. The Enforcer drone's sensor beeped urgently, signaling a potential breach. "Identify yourself," the Enforcer drone demanded in its monotone voice. Ianto froze, his mind racing. He knew this could not go on much longer. "You're much to come, and I can see it. After they would be shame, right now, guarantee." If he did not get these permits through before an audit, everyone involved would be at risk of complicity charges. The line behind him continued to grow. Panic was starting to seep into the faces around him. Ianto realized that if one person slipped up, it could affect every single person in this queue and beyond. The Enforcer drone's sensor beeped again, its red light flashing warningly. Ianto's breath came out in short gasps as he tried to focus on his task. People were joining the queue behind Ianto, adding to the pressure he felt. He knew that if he failed now, it would mean much more than just a delay in rations. Another volunteer stepped forward, his face pale and hands trembling. Ianto hesitated for a moment before pressing down on the permit form. And it felt like an eternity as he watched the Enforcer drone's sensor move closer to him. Finally, the line cleared and the Enforcer drone's sensor beeped once more, indicating no further issues. But Ianto knew that was only temporary. Underneath, another audit was looming, and Ianto needed to prepare. The rations line started to form again, with a dozen new faces eager for their permits. Ianto took a deep breath, knowing the cycle of tension and urgency would continue. Ianto exhaled and focused on the next person in line as the Enforcer drone sensor passed by him. The clock was ticking, but he had no choice but to keep moving forward. The queue began to grow once more, each face a silent plea for help. The risk grew with each ticking second. Ianto leaned over the desk, his knuckles white as he clutched a clipboard. The man in tattered clothes shuffled nervously, his gaze darting to the Enforcer drone above their heads. It beeped again, its red light flashing ominously. Protocol 273. Mandates a full audit in 30 minutes, Ianto muttered, glancing at the clock. "We're under a down. To 5, down soon, I cannot wait." The young man stepped forward nervously, his trembling hands clutching the permit request. "Please, can you hurry?" His voice was barely above a whisper, and Ianto could see the fear in his eyes. Ianto took the permit, his fingers moving mechanically. "Name? Jace," the young man mumbled. "Age? 17. What Mr. Arwintine, Arden Andershinau, Erway, Oh Iddy. A valid ration card, please." Ianto's tone remained flat as he reached for the man's pocket. The boyar's face paled, and he fumbled with his own pocket, pulling out a crumpled ration card. It's all in my bag," he stammered, his voice rising to a squeak. "Where is your bag?" "Well, where's the bag?" Ianto asked, his eyes narrowing. "I left it by the door. And Miss Sternrich, I don't you dare." The boy darted a quick look at the Enforcer drone, then back to Ianto. "Please, Just this one time? When did it you? When you stay? And then said girl. Warned Darren. Ianto once. Fingers closed around the permit as he considered. Wow. The queue behind him was growing impatient. Faces glowered from the other side of the window. The young man's desperate plea tugged at his resolve. All right, Ianto said finally, his voice flat and unyielding. He handed the boy a stern warning. Next time, bring your ration card. The boy nodded quickly, relief washing over him. He hurriedly signed for a new permit, then turned to leave, glancing nervously between the door and the enforcer drone. Wait, Ianto called softly. Yeah. The boy froze, his back rigid as he turned. Oh, keep this, in case you lose your card again. He handed the young man another permit, this one marked ration permit reissue. The boy accepted it without a word, his eyes wide with gratitude. As he left, Ianto watched him go, then returned to his clipboard and the growing queue. 30 minutes. The clock was ticking down, the enforcer drone's sensor beeping more insistently now. Now? Ianto asked. Breaths came in short, measured paces as he continued, processing permits. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the hall outside. The door burst open, and a figure dressed in dark robes stormed in, his eyes scanning the room with alarming speed. His presence sent a chill down Ianto's spine. The man asked, his voice low and menacing. The man asked, his voice low and menacing. Wow, Venetian Ranger, I turned my break at Europe. Alright, don't mean that now though. Ianto swallowed hard, his mind racing. I soon, the answer, run the next hunt and mountain and no England, no not all. The enforcer drone's red light flickered brighter, its beeps more urgent. Jace, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The man in dark robes stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he assessed Ianto. What's on your desk? Permits, Ianto replied, his hand reaching for the clipboard. All legitimate requests. The man snatched it from him, scanning through the papers quickly. His face contorted with anger when he found a permit with an unusually high ration request. Wait, this is suspicious, he growled, his eyes darting to the enforcer drone. Can you check who's been here over the last hour? That's Shikane. Sure, Ianto said, trying to hide his growing anxiety. He signaled the queue behind him to wait while he stepped out from behind the desk. Outside, the man in dark robes surveyed the room, his gaze landing on each person with a mix of suspicion and calculation. The enforcer drone beeped louder, its red light flashing furiously. The young man who had just left was standing by the door, looking back at Ianto with wide eyes. Stay here, Ianto whispered, his heart racing as he realized the gravity of this moment. Don't know. Let me show her. Our email. Alchemist, Lenatsa.net home. Why don't turn up still? The enforcer drone's beats grew more insistent, and the man in dark robes approached Jace. He snatched him by the collar, dragging him back into the office. Ianto watched, dread coiling tighter around his throat. Jace! Ianto called, but it was too late. The man's grip tightened, and Jace whimpered as he was roughly pulled towards the enforcer drone. 30 minutes. Kisho Abakaro, Avent Potel. The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly, the tension in the room palpable. Ianto checked his wrist chrono, the numbers blinking in red against the dull grey wall of the permit office. The man in dark robes was still pacing the room, his gaze shifting from Jace to Ianto. Ianto knew he had just 30 minutes before protocol. 273 kicked in. The notice board loomed ahead, a forest of blue and green permits swaying slightly in the air-conditioned breeze. One Suel. Ianto stepped toward it, hoping to find a permit for Jace among the clutter. Each one was numbered and labelled with a purpose: medical supplies, essential goods, diplomatic credentials. The notice board was like a living map of the galaxy's needs. The man in dark robes stopped his pacing and stared directly at Ianto.
Wonder Kalaya, what should her? What conviction realm? Malala.
Protocol 273 requires all permit issuers to undergo a full audit within 30 minutes. Failure to comply will result in immediate shutdown and investigation. Ianto's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his face neutral. He had to finish this before the man in dark robes could make good on his threat. The notice board was his only hope.
Permission on the trunk and march to life.
He grabbed a permit for Jace, a simple medical kit, and hurried back to the desk. The queue behind him stretched into an impossible length, the faces of anxious citizens pressing against the glass windows. Each person represented a life that needed supplies or services, and Ianto felt their urgency seeping through the glass like cold air. The man in dark robes moved closer, his robes rustling softly.
Verdun Lago. Kandas ni Garganel. Tramadas Serber. Al out.
Ianto's fingers fumbled with the permit, trying to find the correct slot. He knew he could not stall much longer. Every moment wasted increased the risk of suspicion. The Manal's presence was a constant reminder that any delay could lead to serious consequences. The notice board's blue lights flickered ominously as Ianto finally inserted the permit.
Western Tanoi Durable. Water Erstauten Kadoto.
Wanderche. With a deep breath, Ianto turned his attention back to the man in dark robes. The Manar's eyes met his, and for a moment they shared a silent understanding of the gravity of their situation. Ianto knew that if he failed now, not only would Jace be in trouble, but the entire operation could crumble under scrutiny. The man in dark robes nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the necessity of the permits, but his gaze remained fixed on Ianto, an unspoken challenge in his eyes. Ianto's fingers trembled as he reached for another permit, this one marked for essential goods. He had to keep moving, keep working, before protocol. 273 forced him into a position from which there was no escape. Ianto slid behind the counter, his fingers dancing over the holographic keys. The man in dark robes stood before him, his eyes boring into Ianto's with an unsettling intensity. 30 minutes until protocol. 273. Triggers and audits dot now. The office was a maze of screens and droids, each one beeping softly as they checked the latest permit requests. Ianto's mind raced through the pending applications, knowing he had to issue the final permits before the deadline struck. Jace, Ianto said into his comlink, we've got 30 minutes left. A sharp chime interrupted him, signaling an incoming audit request from the audit agent. The man in dark robes nodded, confirming that this was indeed a real check. Ianto's heart quickened slightly as he accessed Jace's file, pulling up the necessary data. I need you to sign these permits now, Ianto instructed, his voice steady despite the tension. Jace appeared on the screen, a flicker of urgency in her eyes. I am on it, she replied, and began signing the final documents. Meanwhile, the audit agent's gaze never wavered. Permit issuer, you have 30 minutes to comply with protocol. 273, or face immediate shutdown. Ianto glanced at the clock above his desk. 25 minutes left. He needed one more permit, a crucial one for essential supplies, that Jace was handling. The droid beside him beeped again, interrupting Ianto's thoughts. Permit issuer, your queue is at 43 applications now, it reported. Keep them running as fast as you can, Ianto ordered the droid, his voice a mix of command and desperation. Jace signed the last permit with a flourish, her pen hovering over the final document. Done do. Ianto scanned through the permits one more time, before handing them to the audit agent. The man in dark robes examined each one, meticulously, his expression unreadable. Very good, he said finally, his voice low and grave. Continue this level of compliance in the future. Ianto nodded, relief mingling with dread as the man left the office. With him gone, Ianto could almost breathe again. But now, there's a new QA, 44 applications waiting. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. Ianto's eyes darted to his clock once more. 15 minutes, until Protocol 273 kicked in. He needed to ensure every permit was processed, or face the wrath of the audit agent and a galaxy-wide shutdown. Keep them coming, Ianto muttered under his breath, his fingers moving with renewed urgency. Just one more cycle. Ianto fingers the holographic screen, watching as 44 permits loom on his monitor like an unyielding wall of red. The queue has risen to 44 applications. Right, 32 more. Jace mutters beside him, his voice tight with tension. He's been processing at maximum speed since morning. They'll never get in before the audits. Audit agent, 34 hovers just outside their line of sight. A constant reminder of protocol, 273. The agent's presence is an invisible weight on every permit. Ianto swipes. Ianto swallows and begins to work through the queue, his eyes scanning each application meticulously. We've got 20 minutes, he says, trying to keep his voice steady despite the countdown. A droid approaches with a fresh stack of permits. 34. Jace notes aloud. What? That's more than we had yesterday. Audit agent, 34 shifts impatiently. Its presence a growing threat. Ianto can feel its gaze on him, scrutinizing every action, every delay. The holographic screen whirs to life with an urgent message. Permit processing deadline approaching. The words are simple, but they carry the weight of an impending shutdown. Jace's hands move even faster. As he processes each permit, his breaths coming in short, sharp bursts. We're running out, he whispers. Though Ianto barely hears him over the constant hum of the office, Ianto clicks through another application, his fingers flying across the interface. I've got 22 left, he reports, trying to keep Jace's spirits up. And you. Wallen's Shiro. Madashi Chopsumi, and with Z. 18. Jace replies, his voice barely above a whisper. Audit agent, 34. He's closing in, his presence more insistent now. Ianto can feel the agentar's eyes on him, tracking every action with cold precision. The droid returns with another stack of permits. 26 applications. 40. Ianto says aloud. We've got 4 left. Jace's hands shake as he works, his focus slipping. This is too much, he murmurs, his voice cracking slightly. Audit agent 34 out. Presence grows even more intense, its gaze unwavering and unyielding. The droid buzzes again with a new stack of permits. 22 applications. 36. Ianto says, counting out loud, as the stack increases the pressure. We're running out of time. Jace's face is pale, his hands trembling. Wait, what if we can't tell? Ianto cuts him off, his voice firm but urgent. Ianto clicks through another permit, his mind racing with the consequences of failure. He clicks through another permit, his mind racing with the consequences of failure. Audit agent, 34, hovers just out of reach, its presence a constant threat. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 56 applications in total. 34. Ianto says, his voice strained as he counts down. We're down to 4. Jace's hands stop moving, his gaze fixed on the last permit. I can't, he whispers, his voice breaking. Ianto clicks through the final application, relief washing over him as the screen confirms its heart's process. He turns to Jace, who is staring at the now empty stack with wide eyes. 34. Ianto says, counting aloud once more. The tension in the room hangs heavy, a palpable weight. Audit Agent 34's presence is an unspoken threat, its gaze never wavering. We made it, Ianto whispers, his voice barely above a whisper. The droid buzzes again, adding 4 more permits to the stack, 50 applications total. 36, Ianto says, his heart sinking as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 hovers closer, its presence an undeniable warning by Krychenza. We have 1 more, Ianto murmurs, his voice steady but strained. Jace's hands tremble as he reaches for the final permit, his focus slipping. I can't Ianto clicks through the last application, the screen confirming its process. The droid buzzes once more, adding 4 more permits. 54 applications in total. 38, Ianto says, counting aloud as the stack grows heavier with each passing moment. Audit Agent 34R. His presence is an unbreakable wall of pressure, its gaze unwavering and unyielding. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits. 74 applications in total. 46, Ianto says, counting down as the stack increases. Audit Agent 34 hovers closer still, its presence a constant threat. The droid buzzes one last time, adding another stack of 42 permits to the pile. 68, Ianto says, his voice growing weaker with each passing moment. We're running out of time.
Now remake soon. Our time.
Audit Agent 34's gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. What now? Jace whispers, his voice breaking as he looks at the stack of permits. Ianto can feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, the stakes rising with every passing moment. The droid buzzes again, adding 40 more permits to the pile. 100 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34 hovers just out of reach, its presence a constant threat. We have 1 more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly. The droid adds another batch of 20 permits, swelling the pile to 120. 88, Ianto says, counting down as the stack increases. Audit Agent 34. Our gaze is unwavering, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes once more, adding 42 more permits to the pile. 14, Ianto says, his voice growing weaker with each passing moment. Audit Agent 34 hovers closer still, its presence a constant threat. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, urgency in his voice. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 200 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, counting aloud as the stack increases. Audit Agent 34's gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 220 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Right, Audit Agent 34 hovers closer still, its presence a constant threat. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 260 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts.
Much do.
Audit Agent 34's presence is an unbreakable wall of pressure, its gaze unwavering and unyielding. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 300 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down.
Wow.
Audit Agent 34 hovers closer still, its presence a constant threat. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes again, adding 40 more permits. 320 applications in total. 88, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34. Ye's gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid adds 20 more permits to the pile, bringing the total to 340 applications. 86, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down, while Audit Agent 34 hovers closer still, its presence a constant threat. We're running out of time. Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 380 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34's gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 400 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 420 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34 asks. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid adds 20 more permits to the pile, bringing the total to 440 applications. 88, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. The clock is ticking, Ianto whispers, his voice cracking as the pile expands. The droid adds the final batch of 40 permits, bringing the total to 460. 86, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34 Ye's gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 480 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 edges nearer, intensifying the looming danger. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits, 500 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34, and his gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 520 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over them. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid adds the final batch of 40 permits, bringing the total to 540. 88, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34 Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 560 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit Agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable. Another batch is here, Ianto whispers, his voice cracking under the weight of the growing pile. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 580 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit Agent 34 asks. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 600 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent, 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 620 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit 834. His gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 640 applications in total. 88, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent, 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 660 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34 up. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 680 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent 34 edges nearer, the tension growing with each move. The clock is ticking. Ianto murmurs, his voice strained by the mounting pressure. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 700 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34. Inertia scale is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 720 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. I don't doubt will. Audit agent, 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable. Not tension palpable. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 740 applications in total. 88, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34 up. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 760 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. The drone's proximity intensifies the sense of impending danger. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 780 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34. Our gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 800 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent 34 looms nearer, the danger it poses ever present. Another batch is here, Ianto whispers, his voice cracking under the weight of the growing pile. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 820 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34 up. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid adds another batch of 20 permits, swelling the stack to 840 applications. 88, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. No? Audit agent 34 edges nearer. The tension palpable. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 40 more permits. 860 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34 hours. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 880 applications in total. 84. Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent, 34 edges nearer. The tension palpable as it looms over us. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 900 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent, 34R. Gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 920 applications in total. 80, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Amidst, audit agent, 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over them. The clock is ticking. Ianto murmurs, his voice strained by the mounting pile of applications. The droid adds the final batch of 40 permits, bringing the total to 940. 88, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent, 34R. His gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 960 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent, 34 looms nearer, the danger it poses ever present. We have one more, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack increases. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 980 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34. His gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 1,000 applications in total. 82, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. We're running out of time, Ianto whispers, his voice breaking slightly as the stack continues to grow. The droid adds the final batch of 40 permits, bringing the total to 1020. 120. 80, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34. Our gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes again, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 1,040 applications in total. 88, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent 34 edges nearer, the tension palpable as it looms over us. This is our last one, Ianto whispers, his voice cracking with strain. The droid buzzes once more, adding 40 more permits. 1,060 applications in total. 86, Ianto says, counting aloud as the pressure mounts. Audit agent 34R. His gaze is unyielding, its presence an unspoken warning. The droid buzzes one last time, adding 20 more permits to the pile. 1,080 applications in total. 84, Ianto says, his voice breaking slightly as he counts down. Audit agent 34 hovers closer still, its